My stepdaughters mocked me for buying groceries and acting like a dad. So I cleared out the fridge, canceled the family account, and dropped off a box of ramen with their real father. He told them to grow up. They laughed at the bags. I walked through the front door, balancing 4 paper grocery sacks like a mule, keys still clenched between my teeth. I set them down, heavy with things they'd asked for: almond milk, frozen acai packets, overpriced vegan protein bars, half of it unfamiliar to me until last year. Before I could even kick the door closed, they were there, hovering in the entryway like vultures with manicures and sarcasm. Ashley cocked her head. Kate smirked. Then they looked at each other and laughed like they were watching a sitcom. "What are you trying to be, a TV dad?" Kate asked, raising her phone like she might record the moment. "Got a deadline in the kitchen too?" Ashley leaned on the banister. "Is this like your big heroic arc? Domestic dad energy or whatever?" They laughed again, louder this time, and Sarah, my wife, their mother, she just stood there in the hallway. Didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't defend me. That silence, I still hear it louder than the laughter. The worst part? I didn't say anything either. I just swallowed it, like I've swallowed so many things in this house. I carried the bags to the kitchen, set them on the counter. My fingers ached from the weight. My back throbbed from a day spent under hot attic insulation rewiring a second-story HVAC system. But none of that mattered. None of it ever seemed to matter. They didn't look at the food. They didn't even ask what I got. Ashley opened the fridge, sighed dramatically, then slammed it shut. "There's never anything good in this house." Then they both disappeared upstairs. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just laughter and exit, like I was the punchline of a joke told too often. Sarah finally walked into the kitchen. I turned to her. "You heard that?" She gave me a look that wasn't quite defensive, wasn't quite ashamed. "They're just being teenagers." That was all. That's what my care got reduced to. A shrug. I nodded slowly and turned back to the groceries. Unpacked the almond milk, placed the berries into the fridge, organized everything on the shelves. My hands moved, but my chest felt hollow. Not angry. Not yet. Just empty. That night I lay in bed next to Sarah, her back turned to me, scrolling on her phone. I stared at the ceiling. The fan ticked with each rotation, off balance. I'd meant to fix that. I fix everything. Except this. At 2 a.m. I got out of bed, went downstairs and sat at the kitchen table in the dark. I kept hearing Kate's voice in my head, "TV dad." And something about it cut deeper than I expected. Not because it was cruel, because it was accurate. That's what I was to them. A character, a useful fixture, provider in khakis. Someone who showed up, played his part, then faded into the background before the credits rolled. I thought about every morning I'd gotten up early to make sure they had breakfast, before they decided they were too old for that. I thought about the birthday cakes I'd baked when their father forgot to call, about the late-night grocery runs, the app subscriptions for their homework tools, the Friday night pizza deliveries. The times I waited in the school parking lot while they texted me, 5 more minutes, 20 minutes late. And I never said no. Never once held it over them. Because I thought that mattered. I thought love didn't need words if it came with consistency. But the thing about consistency is it can look invisible. It becomes expectation. I went back to bed and lay next to a woman who didn't ask me why I left. Who didn't reach for me once. At 6 a.m. I got up again, showered, dressed in silence, went downstairs and opened the fridge. And I emptied it. Every carton, every container, every bottle I had bought. I cleared the shelves like I was erasing evidence. By the time Ashley and Kate came down that morning, the kitchen looked like it belonged to a man who had never stepped foot in a grocery store. "Where's the oat milk?" Ashley asked, peering into the fridge. Kate opened the pantry. "Where's everything?" I poured myself a cup of black coffee. Didn't say a word. Sarah came in last. She paused, looked around. I held her gaze. "We're going back to basics." She blinked. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and canceled the shared grocery app account. Deleted the delivery subscription. pulled up the household spreadsheet and removed my contributions to anything they used without thanks. Spotify, Netflix, DoorDash, school lunch auto payments. Gone. Then I drove across town with a box in the passenger seat. Inside, 3 packs of instant ramen, 2 cans of generic soup, a frozen pizza, and a loaf of bread going stale. I left it on their father's porch. Taped to the box was a note, handwritten. "They're yours now." That was all it said. He didn't call, just texted me a few hours later. "They think life just hands you things. Let them learn." That was it. No anger, no confusion, just tired recognition from another man who knew the cost of pretending you mattered more than you did. My name is Tom, 45, electrician, 23 years in. I live just outside Austin. I married Sarah 3 years ago. Her daughters were already teenagers when I entered the picture. I knew I wasn't walking into an easy dynamic, but I thought love could fill the gaps. I never asked to be called Dad. Never expected a Father's Day card. All I ever asked for was acknowledgement. A simple, "Thanks for picking up the slack" when he didn't. But silence isn't always ignorance. Sometimes it's detachment. Sometimes it's a choice. A refusal to admit the water you drink comes from a pipe someone else keeps fixing. I was never their father. I was just the faucet. Now the handle's turned off. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. When they mocked me over those groceries, I realized something. Arguments don't change anything when contempt has already taken root. So I decided to do the only thing that still had weight in that house: withdraw. Not in rage. In logic. By the next evening, I had a list. Not emotional, not vengeful, just practical. Every subscription, every monthly cost, every place where my name and my credit card kept their world running. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, gone. School lunch accounts, canceled. Phone bills, deleted from autopay. Health insurance extensions, revoked. Every small convenience that whispered, "Tom will handle it." I silenced them all. Sarah was cooking when I sat down at the table and opened the spreadsheet. The clatter of pans behind me mixed with the clicks of my keyboard. She turned once, wiping her hands on a towel. "What are you doing?" I didn't look up. "Rebalancing." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done being laughed at for paying the bills." She didn't answer. Not right away. I think she thought I was bluffing. Most men threaten change. Few follow through. But I'd reached that quiet kind of exhaustion that doesn't roar, it just shuts down the power. I worked late into the night. Each line of the budget was like cutting a cord that had strangled me. I saw where my money went, how invisible it became the moment it left my hands. Streaming platforms, deliveries, birthday surprises, replacement AirPods. I saw the balance sheet of my own erasure. The next morning, the first ripple hit. Kate opened the fridge, looked around, then glared at me. "Where's the food?" I was sitting at the counter with my coffee, boots laced for work. "I don't cook for people who laugh at my care," I said. Her mouth twisted. "Oh my God. You're being so dramatic." Sarah entered just in time to hear it. She froze, eyes darting between us. I could see her debating whether to defend me or defuse it. As always, she chose silence, the safest cowardice. I stood, set my mug in the sink, and walked toward the garage. "Buy your own groceries. Ask your dad. Or don't eat." Kate's voice followed me. "You're seriously cutting us off? Over a joke?" I stopped in the doorway. It's never about the joke. It's about the truth behind it. Then I left. That day at work, I rewired an office complex downtown. 10 hours of sweat and silence. My body ached, but my head was clear. There's something clean about physical labor. It gives you the illusion of control. Wires connect or they don't. Circuits complete or they fail. People aren't like that. You can give them everything, your time, your money, your care, and still be left with static. When I got home that night, Sarah was waiting in the living room. The TV was off. That never happened. "Tom," she started, her tone careful. Like she was speaking to a fuse box she didn't want to trigger. "The girls told me you're cutting off everything. Is that true?" "Yes." She exhaled hard. "You can't just." "I can. And I did. "They're kids," she said. "They don't understand how this sounds to you. They understand enough to humiliate me in my own home." Her eyes softened, that pleading tone creeping in. "They're teenagers, Tom. They lash out. You can't take it personally. Teenagers grow out of it when someone stops feeding the behavior," I said. "You've been defending them for years. That's why it never changes." She fell silent. I could see the calculation in her face, the part of her that wanted to argue but couldn't find ground to stand on. Because deep down she knew. She had watched it happen. Each joke, each dismissal, each moment I was treated like a ghost in my own house. I walked past her and into the garage. The smell of oil and metal felt cleaner than the air inside. I sat on my old workbench stool, just breathing. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It wasn't revenge either. It was peace. Not the warm, cinematic kind people talk about in movies. This was quieter, heavy, but steady. A peace born from subtraction, when you stop pouring yourself into people who treat your effort like background noise. The next morning, Sarah tried to play the middle. She left an envelope on the counter, her way of saying sorry without saying it. Inside were grocery receipts, some cash, a note. "I'll handle it for now. Please don't make this harder." I folded the note neatly and slid it back into the envelope. Then I left it on her pillow. That weekend, the house felt different. Ashley stayed in her room most of the day. Kate sulked. The Wi-Fi had cut out midstream when my account closed, and the panic was instant. They came downstairs like refugees of comfort, demanding explanations. I just said, "Call customer support." They didn't. They waited for Sarah to fix it. She didn't either. By Sunday, they were quieter. Not kind, not apologetic, but quieter. Like the air itself had changed pressure. Monday morning, I came home early from a short job. I walked in to find Sarah sitting at the table, bills spread out. Her eyes were red. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" I nodded. She said, "You're punishing them." "No," I said. "I'm teaching them. By starving them of everything familiar, by reminding them what's earned and what's given." "They turned my care into a joke, Sarah. You laughed by saying nothing. Now they'll live without the punchline." She shook her head. "You think this is strength, but it's just pride." I looked at her for a long time. Pride is pretending you're appreciated when you're not. This is honesty. That night, I cooked a simple meal just for myself. A fried egg sandwich and black coffee. No one joined me. I didn't expect them to. But I noticed something. The sound of dishes clinking upstairs. Running water. Cupboard closing. They were cooking for themselves. The first time in years. When I went to bed, Sarah stayed up, lights still on. I think she was trying to decide whether to follow me or fight me. She did neither. By Wednesday, the changes were complete. Their father had called once, short and awkward. I could hear the guilt in his voice. "Guess I'm taking over now," he said. I replied, "That's what fathers do." A pause. "You really done, Tom?" "Completely." He let out a low whistle. "They won't like it. They already don't." The silence stretched. Then he said something that stuck with me. "They'll learn what effort costs when it disappears." After that call, I sat on the porch for a while. The Texas dusk stretched across the sky, bruised orange and violet. The cicadas screamed. I could hear the faint rhythm of laughter inside, hollow, forced, the kind people use to fill fear. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to go in. The next morning, when I walked into the kitchen, Sarah was making breakfast. Real breakfast, eggs, toast, bacon. The smell filled the room. I sat down quietly. She turned almost defensive. I didn't want the girls to start their day angry. "I'm not angry," I said. "Then what are you?" "Done pretending they deserve everything I give." Kate came down mid-conversation, hair tangled, wearing one of my old t-shirts. She poured a bowl of cereal. Cheap stuff she must have bought herself. She didn't look at me, didn't thank Sarah either. That small, deliberate avoidance was her last act of control. When she left for school, the door slammed. The sound echoed through the kitchen like punctuation. Sarah looked at me, eyes glistening. This isn't the man I married. I met her gaze. No. This is the man you ignored while he tried to hold your family together. She turned away, shoulders shaking. I didn't comfort her, because that's what always reset the cycle, comfort after disrespect. Forgiveness before reflection. Not this time. Later that night, I sat in the garage again. The air smelled of sawdust and oil, the kind of scent that tells you something real was built here, not just maintained. I thought about everything I'd done in 3 years. Every socket fixed, every bill paid, every repair made invisible because I made it look effortless. And how, somehow, that invisibility became their reason to mock me. I wasn't their father, not their blood, not their hero, but I had been their foundation. And now, for the first time, they could feel what it's like when the ground stops holding. The quiet that night wasn't peace, it was consequence. And I sat in it like a man who'd finally stopped begging to be seen. A week passed. Not long in years, but long enough when a house starts starving. Ashley asked first. A voice low, almost embarrassed. Can we add something to the grocery list? I didn't look up from the sink. Just kept washing the same plate over and over. We don't have a grocery list anymore, I said. She didn't reply, just walked away like I'd slapped her. The next morning, Kate hovered near the counter, arms crossed, biting her nail like she used to when she was younger and scared. She watched me butter a piece of toast and said, "Didn't you say you'd always be there?" I set the knife down. I was, I said without looking at her, until I became your punchline. She stood still for a moment. No quip, no comeback, just stillness. She walked away, and I ate in silence. That night I found a note on the kitchen table. Folded once, no name. Just a crumpled $10 bill underneath. For groceries. Earned it myself. I get it's not free anymore. Ashley's handwriting. Slanted. Messy. Defensive. I didn't return the money. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say anything at all. But I left the paper exactly where it was. Not because I forgave her. Because it was the first real currency I'd seen in months, respect. Not cash. The note. The act. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Not of healing. Of awareness. The next few days were quieter. They started doing their own dishes. Putting away laundry. They even cleaned the bathroom after years of pretending not to see the hair clogging the sink. It wasn't gratitude. It was something raw, compliance born of recognition. A shift in gravity. They stopped asking for money. Stopped asking for rides. They didn't even ask when their phones ran out of data. They just sat in the living room reading old magazines, silent. One night, I walked past Ashley's room and heard music playing. Cheap Bluetooth speaker. Not the usual playlist from Spotify. She was using an offline MP3 file. It sounded grainy, ancient. I almost smiled. They were adjusting. Like wild animals once hand-fed, now learning to hunt. Sarah noticed too. She didn't say much, but the way she moved through the house changed. Slower, tense. Like she was walking through a graveyard and didn't want to wake the dead. She cooked more often. Set plates without being asked. Even made their lunches once, peanut butter sandwiches in Ziplocs. I think she forgot how. They were crushed by the time they came home. We didn't talk about it. One night, Kate came home late. Backpack slung low, eyes sunken. She dropped a receipt on the table. Bought groceries. With my own money. I looked down. Just rice, beans, a frozen bag of stir-fry vegetables, and a dented can of soup. She stood there waiting for praise, or thanks, or even acknowledgement. I said nothing. She picked up the receipt and walked away. But the next morning, I made a pot of rice before work. Quietly, left it on the stove. No note, no announcement. When I came home, the pot was empty. Washed, dried, put away. The day after, Ashley asked me, not her mother, if I could drive her to the library. Not the mall. Not a party. The library. I said yes. We didn't talk in the car. But when she got out, she looked back through the open window. Thanks, she said, then closed the door before I could answer. The house wasn't warm. Not yet. But it wasn't frozen anymore either. Still, I didn't lower the drawbridge. I'd learned something in those quiet weeks. Words mean nothing when they cost nothing. So I kept my silence. I watched. They started packing their own lunches, doing their own laundry. They found old clothes in the attic and altered them. DIY YouTube videos replaced clothing hauls. They were adjusting. And I realized, for the first time, they were becoming people who knew the price of things. Not in dollars. In labor. Kate stopped wearing earbuds at dinner. Ashley started putting her phone down during conversations. Sarah noticed, and her eyes lit up like she wanted to say, "See? It's working." But she didn't say it. She knew better now. I wasn't interested in performances. One evening, Sarah sat beside me on the couch. Not close, just beside. She looked down at her hands. "You've changed." I didn't look at her. No. I just stopped giving more than I received. She nodded slowly. "I think they're scared of you." "Good." She flinched. "That's not what I meant." "Neither did I." She sat there a long time. Then, softly, "Do you hate them?" I turned to her then. "Hate's not the word. I pitied them before. That's worse. I pitied what they were becoming under your silence and his absence." She didn't respond, just got up and left the room. That night, I lay in bed and didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, because I didn't know what forgiveness looked like anymore. I wasn't withholding it. I just didn't know if it was earned. The next morning, something changed. We were at the breakfast table, and Kate walked in, hair still wet from the shower. She sat across from me. No plate, no cereal, just sat. She looked at me like she was trying to read a language she'd never learned. Then she said it. "Is it too late?" I didn't answer right away. Ashley walked in behind her, paused when she saw us. Said nothing. Just leaned against the doorframe. Kate cleared her throat. "Too late to start acting like you matter." I looked at her for a long time. Then I spoke. "You don't get to decide when I matter. You get to show me. Or not. But the decision was never yours." She looked away. "I know." Silence again. Ashley finally stepped forward. "We were cruel. No excuses. No half apologies. Just that. It didn't fix anything. But I heard it. And that was new. The house changed after that. Not suddenly. Not cleanly. But enough. They started talking to me. Asking questions. Real ones. What's it like climbing through attics in the summer? Do you ever regret becoming an electrician? Did you love someone before mom? The questions weren't loaded. They weren't weapons. They were bridges. And I answered. Not all at once. Not with warmth. But honestly, I let them see me as something other than a fixture. And for the first time, I saw recognition in their eyes. Not pity, not fear. Understanding. One night, I found a list taped to the fridge. Things to buy. Small stuff. Toilet paper. Dish soap. Instant coffee. A new spatula. At the bottom, a note. "Let us know what you need. We'll handle this week." It wasn't signed. It didn't have to be. I didn't buy the things. They did. And when I saw the new spatula sitting by the stove, bright red, tag still half on, it made me pause. It was cheap. Plastic. Probably dollar store quality. But they had chosen it. Bought it. Used it to flip the eggs I made for myself the next morning. They didn't ask to share the breakfast. They didn't hover, waiting for permission. They just sat. Quiet. Respectful. I didn't say yes, but I set 2 extra plates down. They filled them themselves. And we ate. Together. No apologies. No grand speeches. Just the quiet, tense rebuilding of something fragile. Something that maybe could be called respect. Not forgiveness. Not love. But the first plank of something stronger than silence. And for now, that was enough. It didn't happen all at once. Change never does. It creeps in sideways. Quiet, reluctant, suspicious of itself. You think you'll wake up and the house will feel new, warm, redeemed. But the truth is colder. What happens after the war isn't peace. It's cleanup. A month passed. Kate started leaving early for school. Not slamming the door. Not blasting music from her phone. Just slipping out like someone who finally understood what it meant to be invisible. and didn't want to be that anymore. Ashley folded laundry that wasn't hers. Not all of it. Just enough that I noticed. Sarah. She didn't say much. She moved around me like I was a fire that had already burned the furniture and might still be smoldering. She wanted to talk. I could feel it. Her words hovered, unsaid, like dust caught in sunbeams. But she held back. Maybe she was waiting to see if this was permanent. Or maybe she finally understood that whatever we had was no longer hers to command. Then came the dinner. We were invited to one of Sarah's old college friends' houses. A casual gathering. Nothing fancy. Sarah insisted we go as a family. "Come on," she said, voice light. "It'll be good to get out of the house. Show them we're still functioning." Functioning. As if the goal was optics, not healing. Still, I said yes. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see who we were in front of strangers. Maybe I wanted to see if the girls would wear masks again. Those pretty public faces that made us look like a postcard. We drove there in silence. Sarah fiddled with the radio. Ashley sat in the back with her earbuds in, not plugged into anything. Kate stared out the window like the world outside might give her an excuse to disappear. The house was a big craftsman with too much glass and too many throw pillows. Wine glasses in every hand. Laughter that tasted rehearsed. The kind of place where everyone talks about their kids like little gods. I didn't drink. Just sat at the far end of the table, watching the stories swirl around me. Then came the question. One of Sarah's friends, blonde, glossy, forever 40, looked over at Kate, smiled wide and fake. "And who's this handsome man to you?" Kate didn't hesitate. She didn't flinch. She didn't glance at her mother for permission. She just said, "That's my dad. Not stepdad. Not Tom. Just dad." The room didn't go quiet. It didn't need to, because for me everything stopped. Kate went back to her plate. The woman nodded politely. Sarah's hand tightened briefly around her wine glass. And me? I didn't speak. Didn't smile. Didn't let it show. But inside, something let go. Like a fist unclenching after years of holding its own throat. I didn't know if I believed it, if she meant it, if it was for the room or for me. But it didn't matter, because in that moment, she walked back across the distance she'd built. And she did it without being asked. That's what changed everything. Not the word, the choice. Because real connection doesn't come from apologies. It comes from change. We got home late. Sarah went straight to bed. Ashley disappeared upstairs. Kate lingered. I was locking the front door when she spoke. I meant what I said. I turned. She was in the hallway, arms crossed. Vulnerable posture disguised as teenage defiance. "You didn't have to," I said. "I know," she replied. "That's why I did." Then she turned and walked away. That night, I stood at the foot of my bed, staring at the sleeping shape of Sarah beneath the blankets. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired, like a man who had finally been handed the receipt for everything he gave, and saw that something had finally been purchased. But not love, not comfort, respect. And that was enough. The next few weeks unfolded differently. Kate stopped demanding things. She started asking, with respect. And I, cautiously, slowly started giving again. Not because I forgot what happened, but because I could see what was happening now. They were changing, not out of guilt, out of growth. And me? I had changed too. I no longer gave automatically, no longer filled the void like it was my job. I gave when asked with sincerity. I helped when asked with kindness. Not obligation, not fear. I wasn't their lifeline anymore. I was a person again. One evening, Ashley sat beside me on the porch. We watched the sun bleed into the horizon. Texas dusk, hot, heavy, buzzing with insects. She spoke first. "Do you miss when it was easier?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "It was never easy. You just didn't see the weight I carried." She nodded slowly. "I think we made it heavier." I looked at her. She met my eyes, and I saw the flicker of something I hadn't seen in 3 years. Accountability. I didn't forgive her. Not in that moment. Forgiveness is a slow furnace. But I opened the door. She stayed there until the stars came out. Said nothing else. Just sat beside me like silence wasn't punishment anymore. Kate eventually followed suit. She stopped speaking over me. She started asking how my day was. Not always. Not perfectly. But enough. Respect, I realized, can't be demanded. Only earned. And that goes both ways. I wasn't a perfect man. I held back my warmth like a ration. I gave too much for too long, then took it all away like a drought. But they learned something from that. And so did I. I learned that if someone once called you nothing, they'd better walk the path back to someone. With humility, not expectations. With action, not apologies. One morning, Sarah placed her hand on mine at breakfast. "You did the right thing," she whispered. I didn't answer, because I wasn't looking for approval. I was looking for balance. That's what had been missing all along. Not love, not money, balance. A sense that what you gave was being held with care. Not discarded, not mocked. So now, I leave the porch light on for them. Not as a beacon of unconditional service, but as a reminder. You get what you respect. You keep what you tend. And you lose what you take for granted. Forever. So tell me, was I too harsh? Was I cruel to make my care a mirror and force them to see what they'd become? Or was this the only path left? To stop feeding the fire and let them find their own warmth? To step back and let the silence teach what words never could? Would you have endured it? Or would you have walked away long before I ever did?